Back on Inside Tennessee, we talk money in this block, and we're going to start with the mayor's race. Eddie Manis spent $534,000. The winner, Indya Kincannon, spent $277,000. Panel, that is an example of what happened in 3 of the 5 city races. The person who spent the least amount of money won the race. North?
And in 2 of those, it was very disproportionate. I mean, Eddie's race versus Indya, that was what? That was 200,000 more plus than that he spent versus her.
So let's talk about that one in particular, because we'll get to the other race in a minute. But what does spending in the mayor's race say to all of you?
Well, I think it shows, right, that on a local level, and I think Susan and I would probably agree, on a national level, you can't get away with a shoestring budget. But on a local level, if you're smart, and as we keep talking, have a ground game, get your people out, knock on doors, it's achievable, you can win a race on a lower budget than your opponent.
I just want to push back on that, that idea of a ground game, because clearly, Indya Kincannon had a lot of people knocking on doors. But my sense is, from knowing Eddie Manis for years, and you all know him well, no one really outworks Eddie at just about anything. So I would imagine his campaign was equally aggressive at knocking on doors and talking to people. But tell me.
I'm not sure that's true.
I'm not sure it is either. I know they did some of that, but I'm not sure it was their main focus. And when you're, as Don said, when you're running a local race, you have to knock on doors in this city. You have to.
That's the definition of ground game.
Right. She had her husband working 12 hours knocking on doors on his birthday.
Right.
So, you know, that's important.
Well, I will say, when we asked both Eddie and Indya in October, when they were here, I said, how many doors are you knocking on? And they both said thousands. So while they didn't knock on my door, and I am in an important precinct, by the way, I take them at their word. I think they probably did. I think that's part of the secret, but I don't think that's all of the secret.
Well, the other thing about the ground game, as we talk about, is getting your voters to the polls. And I've always felt that Indya had a much better opportunity and much more people that were going to get turned out for her on election day. She didn't win early voting, but it was in my opinion, that she was going to get her people to the polls.
More energized.
Yep.
And a city.
More passionate.
This is the city.
More passionate for her.
Indya brought it up. It is nonpartisan, but it's still partisan. And Knoxville is
a
closer to a Democratic city.
Let's also not overlook the fact that she is a veteran of running a campaign before, and she had all those folks to tap into.
She served on school board for many years, was the chair at one time. Let's move to Council AtLarge A, and the winner in this race, Lynn Fugit. She spent more than $39,000. Her challenger, Charles Lomax, who was a newcomer to this race, spent $28,000. He's a pastor. She has a background in banking, the CEO of Girl Scouts. So what would you say about this race and how it shook out?
I'm a little surprised, frankly, that Charles spent that much money.
It was a difference of 80 votes, I believe, that she won.
That was a very close race. Lynn has obviously been on the ballot several times, school board, other things she's run for, and she's very well known in the community, and he was brand new.
Right.
But we had him on our show, and we were all really impressed with him. But he raised a lot. That's a lot of money.
It is. But remember, you know, Lynn, everybody that's in politics has known Lynn for a long time. You're on school board, you're going to have a segment of the population that's not going to be happy with you.
Right.
And where Lomax probably didn't have any negatives to speak of.
Let's move to AtLarge B. This was David Hayes and the winner, Janet Testerman. And here was the difference money-wise.
Oh, that's a huge difference.
He's a stay-at-home dad, works in some marketing and clothing, and then she is the CEO of Young Williams Animal Center, and you can see the difference in spending, and the vote margin here was a lot, 2,500 votes.
Yeah, I think, you know, we found Hayes to be, he was very interesting and fresh, and I thought it was a great idea for some youth to get into this race, but Janet's just well known, again, doesn't have any strong negatives, and that was not a race that surprised any of us.
I will say, though, I think the margin was closer than I anticipated. I thought maybe it would be that Janet would get more than she did.
Yeah, 10, 11 points. It's pretty significant.
Yeah, but I was thinking in the 60 range, kind of the Al Bowie Thomas range. And he did better than I thought, and he also spent more money than I thought he would. He spent around,
Me
what,
too.
10 or 11K?
I hope we see him again. I think he's very interesting. He could be good for this community.
We're going to take a quick break, come back and talk more about the other two races we haven't talked about yet, and some closing thoughts on Inside Tennessee.